Imagine walking into a royal palace. Velvet curtains, golden thrones, glittering crowns, and then the smell hits you. Spoiled perfumes, sweaty silk, and layers of unwashed flesh. Believe it or not, for centuries, many kings and queens believed that bathing was dangerous, sinful, or even deadly. Today, we're diving into 6 royals who avoided water like the plague, literally. Their shocking hygiene habits might make you thank the heavens for modern plumbing. Let's start with the Virgin Queen herself. Elizabeth I ruled England with fire and brilliance, dazzling ambassadors with her wit, her gowns, and her power. But there was one thing she did not dazzle them with: her hygiene. Elizabeth was proud of her restraint when it came to bathing. She famously declared, almost as if bragging, "I bathe once a month, whether I need it or not." For her, bathing was not a daily ritual but a rare, carefully supervised event. Doctors and advisors warned her constantly that soaking in hot water would open the pores and allow plague, fevers, or poisonous air to seep inside her body. To Elizabeth, a hot bath wasn't relaxation, it was flirting with death. So instead of water, she turned to other methods. She believed that changing into fresh undergarments kept her clean. Linen, according to the medical wisdom of the time, absorbed sweat and impurities. The idea was that the fabric pulled out the filth, leaving the skin purified. Elizabeth was known for her love of fine, clean linen, and her laundresses worked endlessly to provide her with stacks of it. In her mind, swapping out a chemise was just as good, if not better, than soaking in water. And then there was the makeup. Elizabeth was obsessed with maintaining her pale, mask-like appearance. She slathered her face with white lead foundation, a thick, poisonous paste that cracked and caked the longer she wore it. Instead of washing it off, she often just reapplied fresh layers. Imagine weeks of sweat, oils, and powder building into a paste so thick that cracks opened up like a dried riverbed. Beneath that mask, sores and scars from smallpox festered, hidden away under the illusion of royal beauty. The Queen also adored perfumes. Her chambers at court were filled with pomanders, little balls of spices, herbs, and oils meant to mask bad smells. Courtiers wrote of her magnificent presence, her golden hair wigs, her dazzling gowns. But never, not once, did they write of her fragrance. Perhaps that silence says more than words ever could. So while Elizabeth's court glittered with pageantry, the truth was less glamorous. She was a monarch wrapped in perfume, linen, and poisonous makeup, all designed to cover the reality that she feared the very thing that today defines basic cleanliness: a simple bath. Next up, the Sun King, the man who built Versailles and turned himself into a living god. But under all that gold and glory, dirt, lots of dirt. Louis XIV supposedly bathed only twice in his entire life. He hated water, believing it made people sick. Instead, he relied on mountains of perfume, gallons of it, and endless silk stockings and lace to cover the problem. One ambassador even wrote that when Louis entered a room, you smelled him before you saw him, and not always in a good way. James, the king who united England and Scotland, had a strange philosophy. He believed bathing was harmful to health. He once said that the dirtier the skin, the healthier the man. So James rarely bathed, wore the same clothes for weeks, and let his hair grow wild. His courtiers complained that he scratched himself constantly, especially during audiences, leaving his clothes covered in lice and fleas. Imagine being knighted by a king who hadn't touched soap in months. 4. Queen Isabella of Castile. Isabella, the queen who sponsored Christopher Columbus, had a legendary quote about bathing. She once bragged that she had only bathed twice in her entire life, once when she was born and once when she got married. Why? Because Isabella believed bathing was immodest and sinful. She thought it encouraged vanity and lust. Instead, she relied on scented oils and religious devotion, but her pure approach may have fueled infections, making life at the Spanish court far less glamorous than we imagine. Like father, like son, Louis XIII, the father of the Sun King, was also famously dirty. He hated water so much that when he was forced to bathe for medical reasons, he had to be dragged screaming into the tub. Instead of bathing, Louis XIII loved changing clothes several times a day, believing that clean fabric kept the body healthy. He wore layers of linen and smothered himself in powders. But the result? A court filled with the smell of sweaty nobles masking themselves with clouds of musk and rose oil. When we think of Marie Antoinette, we often picture the glittering Queen of France surrounded by jewels, towering wigs, and endless parties at Versailles. She's remembered for the famous line, "Let them eat cake," though she never actually said it. But what history rarely tells you is that behind all the luxury and powder, Marie Antoinette wasn't exactly fresh and clean. Yes, it's true that Versailles had bathing rooms, and Marie even had her own private bath installed, a rare privilege at the time. But here's the twist: she rarely used it. Like many royals of her era, she was raised to believe that bathing too often was dangerous. Doctors whispered that hot water opened the body to deadly diseases. To soak in a tub, they warned, was to invite sickness and death, and Marie, like her fellow royals, listened. Instead of embracing water, she perfected the art of what was called a dry bath. Her maids would rub her body with cloths soaked in alcohol or vinegar, believing it cleansed the skin without the risks of water. Afterward, she would change into layer after layer of fresh linen undergarments, the royal version of washing without ever touching a drop of water. Perfume became her armor. Marie Antoinette practically lived in a cloud of scent: floral waters, rose oils, orange blossoms, and musk. Her towering wigs weren't just fashion statements. They were dusted with flour and powder to mask the smell of sweat. Courtiers even wrote about her obsession with perfumes, noting that she spent a fortune on bottles to keep herself smelling pleasant, even while avoiding real baths. But beneath the glamour, the truth was uglier. Her painted face often hid blemishes and irritation caused by heavy white makeup and rouge. Her elaborate gowns trapped sweat and filth beneath countless layers of silk and corsets. In the suffocating heat of Versailles, the Queen and her ladies-in-waiting were often more concerned with repowdering, perfuming, and changing clothes than actually cleaning their bodies. Ironically, when the French Revolution came crashing down, the common people who stormed Versailles accused her of living in obscene luxury while they starved. Yet what those angry crowds didn't realize is that Marie Antoinette herself lived in a palace that reeked of unwashed bodies and stale perfume. Even her greatest wealth couldn't buy her the simplest comfort we take for granted today, the clean freshness of soap and water. And by the end of her life, when she was imprisoned and stripped of her royal luxuries, she was forced into grimy, filthy cells where she smelled worse than ever before. For a queen who once hid behind powders and perfumes, her downfall came with the cruelest irony. She finally stank not from fear of bathing, but because revolution had taken away even her perfumed mask. When we look back at these kings and queens, it's almost unbelievable to think that the most powerful people on earth, the ones draped in silk, dripping with jewels, and commanding entire empires, were often terrified of a simple bar of soap and a bucket of water. They weren't just skipping a shower here and there. For them, avoiding baths was a lifestyle, a belief system, even a royal tradition. They believed that water could poison their bodies, open their pores to death itself, or lure them into sinful vanity. Their doctors warned them, their priests scolded them, and their traditions reinforced it. So they hid their filth under powders, perfumes, and layer after layer of clothing. The result was a world where beauty was painted on with white lead, where perfume was used like armor, and where silk sheets soaked up sweat and rot because water was seen as the true enemy. So the next time you imagine Queen Elizabeth adjusting her crown, or King Louis striding into the Hall of Mirrors, picture the hidden truth, the stained linens, the crawling lice, the suffocating stench. Their glittering power was real, but so was their filth. History remembers them as majestic and untouchable, but if you stood close enough, the truth would have hit your nose before your eyes ever saw the crown. And that is the final irony. The most powerful people in history were afraid of the very thing that today we consider the simplest sign of dignity: a bath.